Hello. This short video is just to describe an outline of the professional training that can be done with the David Charles Rowan School of Astrology and Esoteric Studies. The introduction course, you may know, is an 18-part course that introduces a person to astrology as a general topic, its history, basic foundation in psychology, dynamics of the unconscious, mythology, ancient history, and astrology itself, the anatomy of an astrological birth chart, a deep exploration of the planets and signs and houses, which some people with astrological knowledge find a new angle, a new perspective, a new kind of lens for. So once a person has completed the introduction course, they're then eligible to do professional training with me. This entails looking at astrology in certain sections or stages. So the first section is known as Astrography, the art of being able to literally read a person's life like a book through the language of astrology. Once that's been covered, then everything becomes modular. So, for example, learning how to calculate a birth chart by hand is an option. Forecasting, astrological forecasting is another option. Relationship astrology, business astrology, and so forth. The first part, though, is astrobography, learning the language of astrology in great depth. And this entails, first of all, looking at the planets and the houses in a particular sequence that's set out. And each planet is explored through all 12 signs of the zodiac in all of the houses in the astrological birth chart. And we use ourselves as a template to do this. So let's say, for example, when I was born, the sun is in Aries. At the time I was born, the sun is in the 4th house. I was born just after midnight. And so, when we come to look at the sun in Aries, we'd use me as an example. So that means we'd explore my astrological sun, its sign, its house, the aspects to the sun, and any houses touched by Leo. And that would take about 2.5 hours to explore my astrological sun. So when the recording of that class reaches me, that means then that I can then save that, and that's a part of my life recorded and discussed in detail with people I trust. Then we do yours, whatever sun sign yours is. We'd look at your astrological sun. There might be more than one person in a class with the same sun sign, but they wouldn't be in the same houses and they wouldn't have the same aspects. So if there was, for example, another person with a sun in Aries in the same class, then that then would mean that we have 2 examples. So how do I express my Ariesness? How does the other person express their Ariesness? Is it the house position that makes a difference? Is it the angles to the sun that make a difference? Is there something in the chart that suggests that we would express ours this way or that? That then enables you to begin to read. And of course, in looking at another person's chart, what's happening then is that all the students in the class are watching an interaction between myself and the person whose chart we're looking at. You can see their responses to things I suggest, their reactions to things the astrology reveals, their incredulity, their surprise, their amazement, their disagreement, right? Whatever the emotion is. And they can be as fruitful in a learning process. And of course, all of the people watching that particular class also watch me and are learning how to deliver, how to interpret, how to negotiate and navigate this complex arena of a person's psyche using these symbols from this fine and ancient art. That would take a whole class. So each person in the class would have a 2.5 hour whole class just on your personal sun. There might be in a class some signs of the zodiac or sun signs that aren't represented by anybody in the room. in which case those sun signs would then become case study classes. In a case study class, for example, if there wasn't anybody in the group with sun in Taurus, an email would be sent out to all the students asking for the time, date, and place of birth, in other words, the chart data, the birth data, of anyone you know who has sun in Taurus, and then that you'd like to be included in a case study exploration. So when we get to do the sun in Taurus, there would be about roughly a 30-minute lecture on the sun in Taurus, its dynamics, having done all of ours first. So we've explored the sun in a rich depth, and then we kind of précis it down and get an overview of the sun in Taurus. And then we'd look at any of the people that people in the class know as examples of sun in Taurus. And then we would look at people that I've drawn out from my client base over the last 30 years, people of interest, people who demonstrate different facets or dynamics of the sun in Taurus, and then finishing off with half a dozen famous people with sun in Taurus, like Queen Elizabeth II, for example. And when we look at any people that the students know, or anybody from my case study listing, all of the personal details and all of the person's name are omitted. They're deleted from the picture of the chart, so that when we look at the chart in the screen, there is absolutely no knowledge of who the person is. Their identity is remained private and anonymous. And the reason is that in order to kind of have a general rule of thumb around confidentiality, I always adopt the policy, if you tell the story, you never mention the person's name. And if you mention the person's name, never tell the story. And that way, you can discuss case studies without stepping over personal boundary, and you can maintain confidentiality. It's a cornerstone of professional work. Once we've completed the sun, we then go on to the next chapter and look at the ascendant. So each student will also get an hour's recording or 2.5 hours recording of their rising sign. And it takes 2.5 hours to describe. Right? And then we go on to the moon, the astrological moon. A part of the dynamic of the astrological moon is an overview of the person's first 3 years of life, the unconscious conditioning that they received during their formative years, their relationship with their mum, but also their ancestry as well. Is it possible to look at a person's moon and get implications or indications of a person's general ancestry? A bit like who do you think you are, but using astrology instead of looking up documents. Let's find out. That might be possible, might not be possible, but, experiment and see. When we move on to the planet Mercury, it has such complexity that it takes 2 classes per person. That's 5 hours to explore one person's Mercury. It takes 5 hours or 2 classes to explore one person's Venus. Mars, so far in online classes, has taken 3 classes per person. That's between 6 and 7.5 hours per person, just to describe the Mars in their birth chart. And of course, these recordings, in a sense, then build up a library of your life story being kind of described and explored in the sequence that you've lived in. It's not an astrobiography reading. That's far more focused and pertinent just to you. But, it does kind of provide a sense of that, in addition to learning about the astrology. Another kind of personal touch that I like is that before we begin the professional training course, all students are invited to send me either MP3 files or just the titles of bits of music or songs that really move their heart. What music moves your heart? What songs have you heard since you were a child? And, whether just recently or way back when, that when you move it, it deeply touches your life. It sums you up. It says something about you. Is it one long 10-minute piece of music? Or is it 3 short clips of music. What what would what music just kind of resonates with you? Whatever it is, 10 minutes of that is used as your tea break music. So in a class, when we have a tea break, your music plays and it touches your heart. I mean, looking at the astrology does that anyway. You know, when we're talking about the astrological moon and we're talking about your mum and your childhood and how you saw the world as a baby, uh, how you tend and care for others now by looking at the moon sign, house, and aspects to the moon and parts of the chart touched by Cancer. So progressively, we learn about ourselves. Progressively, we learn about one another as well. And as we move forwards in time, your familiarity with the vocabulary, the lexicon of astrology grows, whilst at the same time, the topics that we're exploring increase in complexity as well. And it is an incredibly illuminating thing to do. You learn more about the people in the class than a lot of the people you might know in life. So the bonds of friendship that grow between us are incredibly strong as well. I'm still friends with people from my very earliest classes back in 1991. We've maintained friendship and goodwill all this time. That doesn't mean that you have to become friends with fellow students. It's just a natural occurrence because you're getting to know people on such a deep level. Another thing that takes place, of course, is that you're discovering how different people are. Your beliefs, your values, your perspectives of things, your sense of the past, your sense of the future, completely individual. And by listening to another person recount theirs, you can then find that your sense of what it is to be human expands and grows. This really is an exploration of the human condition. And I often describe it as an adventure in consciousness, because that's exactly what it is. So this brief video has to be short, but if you'd like to know any more about this, please feel free to get in touch. And it's discussed in detail on the last day of the Introduction to Astrology course as well. So yeah, thank you for your time in listening to this brief description of a little bit of what it's like to do professional training with me. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much indeed. Take care. Bye.